This IRS agent had already checked out of his marriage. He wanted a future with the Brazilian nanny instead. Divorce wasn't something he was willing to consider. He didn't want to lose money. He didn't want shared custody. And more than anything, he didn't want to end up behind bars. So he came up with a horrifying alternative: spy, creating a fake online persona and advertising an extreme sexual fantasy. He planned to lure an unsuspecting stranger into his home, someone he could later frame for murder. The goal was simple: his wife would be dead, the stranger would be dead, and the blame would fall entirely on the outsider. Here's how everything unfolded inside the Banfield home. I'm Chris. Let's rewind. Friday morning, February 24, 2023. We're in Fairfax County, Virginia, roughly 20 miles outside Washington, D.C. The morning begins like any other. At around 7 a.m., 38-year-old Brendan Banfield leaves his house, heading to work. Just minutes later, the family's 23-year-old Brazilian au pair, Juliana Perez Magalhães, loads Brendan's 4-year-old daughter into the car. Their plan is to spend the day at the National Zoo. But almost immediately after driving away, Juliana realizes something important is missing. The lunches are still in the refrigerator. She turns the car around and heads back. As she pulls into the driveway, before she can even step out, she notices something alarming. A man she doesn't recognize is walking into the house, carrying a backpack. Juliana immediately calls Christine Banfield, who should still be inside. There's no answer. Next, she calls Brendan. Normally, he'd already be at work, but when Juliana reaches him at 7:37 a.m., he's still nearby, sitting in a McDonald's parking lot. Within minutes, Brendan returns to the house. Minnie arrives. Brendan, Juliana, and the child all enter together. Juliana takes the little girl downstairs to the basement. At 7:47 a.m., Fairfax County Emergency Dispatch receives the first 911 call from the Banfield residence. The dispatcher hears a faint moaning sound, then the call suddenly disconnects. About 10 minutes later, another call comes in. This time, Juliana is frantic. She's asking for help, but struggles to clearly give the address. Moments later, a man takes over the call. It's Brendan. He tells the dispatcher that he just shot a man who stabbed his wife. Inside the house, police arrive within minutes. Inside the bedroom, they find Christine Banfield suffering from multiple stab wounds to her neck, bleeding heavily. Nearby lies the body of Joseph Ryan, already deceased on the floor. He had been shot once by Brendan and once by Juliana. At first glance, it appears to be a tragic case of a husband stopping a violent intruder. But investigators quickly realize that appearances can be misleading. Where it really begins, the story actually starts back in October 2021. That's when Juliana is hired by the Banfield family as a live-in au pair to help care for their young daughter. She's provided room and board and paid $200 per week. From the outside, the Banfields look like the ideal American household. Christine is a nurse. Brendan works as a special agent for the IRS. They live in a large home in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood. They've been together for nearly 2 decades, having met back in college. But less than a year after Juliana moves in, Brendan begins an affair with her. Juliana later claims she initially believed it was casual. That illusion doesn't last long. By October 2022. During a secret trip to New York only 2 months into the affair, Juliana says Brendan starts talking about removing his wife from the picture entirely. Divorce is never discussed. According to Juliana, Brendan doesn't want the financial loss or shared custody that would come with it. Instead, she says, he chooses murder. These set up. Juliana tells investigators that Brendan creates a fake profile on a BDSM fetish website. The username, Anastasia9. The profile uses an old photograph of Christine wearing a swimsuit. From that account, an ad is posted inviting a man to come to the Banfield home to participate in a violent stranger role-play fantasy. Together, Brendan and Juliana browse profiles and message men, pretending to be Christine and describing the fantasy in graphic detail. Juliana claims all of these conversations take place on Christine's laptop. Brendan is extremely careful. They only log in when Christine is physically home, so it appears she's the one using the account. They also coordinate their movements, taking turns leaving the house so their phones register at distant cell towers. Something Juliana says was meant to create a digital alibi and confuse investigators later. The account attracts plenty of interest. But Brendan isn't just looking for anyone. According to Juliana, he cuts off contact with men who want to meet beforehand, suggest a hotel, or propose any location other than the Banfield house. Eventually, they choose the person they believe will be the perfect scapegoat. Enter Joseph Ryan. His name is Joseph Ryan. He's 39 years old and lives in Springfield, Virginia, about 25 miles from the Banfield home, with his grandmother and his dog. People who know Joseph describe him as quiet, gentle, and kind-hearted. He loves animals, especially dogs. Joseph also enjoys live-action roleplay. Most of the time, that means traditional layup-in costumes, characters, and staged battles in the woods. Times, it involves consensual, non-violent BDSM roleplay, exactly the kind of fantasy being advertised by the Anastasia 9 account. Building trust for nearly a month. Brendan and Juliana catfish Joseph, slowly gaining his trust. At one point, Juliana even speaks to him on the phone, pretending to be Christine. For the plan to work, Joseph must agree to very specific instructions. He's told exactly when to arrive, which door will be unlocked, and to go directly to the bedroom. Still posing as Christine, Brendan sends Joseph a photo showing what she wants him to bring. The list includes rope, a chain and lock, and a kitchen knife. Joseph is also told that once inside, no matter how much the woman screams or pleads, he must not stop, because it's all part of the fantasy. Joseph agrees. Investigators later believe he thought everything was consensual and that the items were simply props. Behind the scenes while this is happening, Brendan prepares in other ways. In the weeks leading up to the attack, he surveys the neighborhood, identifying security cameras he doesn't want recording activity. He also installs sound-reducing windows in the home, a move prosecutors later argue was meant to prevent neighbors from calling 911 before the scene could be staged. And that brings everything to the morning. It was all supposed to go exactly according to plan. On Friday, February 24, 2023. Brendan takes Christine's phone and opens the home's smart security app, ensuring the front door will remain unlocked. After unlocking the door, Brendan silences Christine's phone and slips it into a kitchen drawer. He then leaves the house at his usual time, just as he does every workday. But instead of driving to his office, he pulls into a nearby McDonald's parking lot and waits, back at the house. Juliana tells Christine she is taking the child to the zoo. She straps the 4-year-old into the car, hands her an iPad to watch a movie, and drives away, leaving Christine home alone. A short distance down the road, Juliana stops and waits. Right on schedule, Joseph Ryan arrives. That's when Juliana sets the plan in motion. She first calls Christine, no answer, exactly as expected. Then she calls Brendan. He immediately heads back to the house. Stay. When Brendan arrives, he, Juliana, and the child enter through the back door. The little girl is told to stay in the basement, while the adults quietly make their way upstairs. According to Juliana, they pause outside the bedroom door, listening. They want to hear signs of a struggle, proof that Joseph is doing what he was instructed to do. When they open the door, Joseph is on top of Christine. Brendan shouts, "Police!" Christine begins screaming, yelling that the man has a knife. Brendan fires a shot, hitting Joseph in the head. Juliana later says Christine is completely disoriented. She screams, asking Brendan what he's done, and begs Juliana to call 911. Juliana makes the call, but Brendan immediately signals her to end it. That brief call becomes the first mysterious 911 call from the house, the one that abruptly disconnects. Juliana says Brendan then tells her to leave the room and grab a towel. While she's gone, Brendan picks up the knife Joseph brought with him and begins stabbing Christine. Juliana later claims she moves to the far side of the bed, crouches down, and covers her eyes and ears, trying not to see or hear anything as Brendan kills his wife. In the chaos, Juliana notices Joseph is still alive. She tells Brendan, but he doesn't respond. Using a gun Brendan had previously given her, Juliana fires another shot, this time into Joseph's chest. Afterward, Brendan uses the towel to smear Christine's blood onto Joseph's body, strengthening the illusion that Joseph was the attacker. Once the scene is staged, additional 911 calls are made. Police arrive shortly after, and the investigation begins. Suspicion grows as detectives work to piece together what happened. Juliana moves her belongings into Christine's closet and begins sleeping in the marital bed. Photos of Brendan and Christine are replaced with pictures of Brendan and Juliana. Investigators quickly take notice. This no longer appears to be a simple case of spit offense. For starters, there's no evidence that Christine was ever interested in extreme role-play fantasies. No private messages, no journals, no secret accounts, nothing. The only trace is a single fetish website profile, Anastasia 9. Investigators also discover that Christine had never invited anyone to the house before. Joseph Ryan was the first and only visitor connected to that account. Digging deeper, detectives uncover the affair between Brendan and Juliana. They learned the two had been visiting a shooting range together, practicing target shooting. Eventually, Brendan purchased a firearm there, the same weapon Juliana later used to shoot Joseph. Slowly, the version of events Brendan and Juliana described stops matching the evidence. What once looked like a tragic accident now appears to be something far more calculated. A carefully planned crime. Arrests and trial 8 months later. In October 2023, police arrest Juliana at a school bus stop. She's charged with second-degree murder. While Juliana remains in jail, investigators continue focusing on Brendan. For nearly a year, detectives monitor recorded phone calls between the two. Despite everything, they stay in contact. But the conversations reveal something important. The trust between them is gone. In one recorded call, Juliana asks Brendan whether he's only staying loyal because he's afraid she'll turn on him. In September 2024, Brendan Banfield is arrested. He's charged with aggravated murder, as well as felony child cruelty and child abuse. Prosecutors argue he involved his 4-year-old daughter in the plan and left her alone in the basement while the killings happened upstairs. 1 month later, Juliana agrees to a plea deal. She pleads guilty to manslaughter in exchange for a reduced sentence and her testimony against Brendan. The trial begins in January 2026. Brendan pleads not guilty. His defense insists Joseph Ryan attacked Christine and that Brendan shot him to stop the assault. They reject the prosecution's claim of a coordinated double murder. Brendan's attorney argues that Juliana's story was shaped by prosecutors and that her testimony was bought in exchange for a lighter sentence and the opportunity to profit by selling her story as a future true crime documentary. Brendan takes the stand in his own defense. He claims he tried to distance himself from Juliana early on and says she was the one who pursued him. According to Brendan, Juliana flirted with him whenever Christine wasn't home and showed him dating profiles of men she matched with, many of them named Brendan, or some variation of it. When Juliana described her ideal man, Brendan testifies she was essentially describing him. He admits to having affairs in the past but insists he never intended to leave his wife and certainly never planned to kill her. As far as Brendan is concerned, that morning was exactly what it appeared to be. In the end, it's up to the jury to decide who's telling the truth. On February 2nd, 2026, they deliver their verdict. Guilty. Brendan Banfield is convicted on 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of using a firearm during a felony, and 1 count of child endangerment. He now faces life in prison. As for Juliana, she may ultimately receive time served.